Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar. We are very excited to have you joining us for a session on using the Cornell Meat Calculator to optimize your meat pricing and sales strategies. So whether you're small scale producing or you're running a larger operation, understanding your costs and setting your right price is critical for your profitability and for your sustainability of your business. So tonight we are very honored to have Matt LeRoux from Extension. He's an Extension associate from Cornell University, and he's got a whole list of universities along there with his name, and I've let him do a more in-depth introduction of himself, but he is an expert in agriculture marketing and meat pricing, and he will walk us through how to use this meat calculator to help you analyze costs and determine your profitable pricing and to make informed business decisions when it comes to pricing your products. So before we begin, I would like to say my tongue twister that I always have to spit out here with my numbers. But we want to thank so much Extension Risk Management Education for funding tonight's program. And their support enables us to bring these valuable learning opportunities and services to producers across the state of West Virginia and beyond. This is funded through the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture, materials based upon the work supported by USDA NIFA under award number 2003 70027-40447. So without any further ado, I'll go over the quick housekeeping stuff. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I will keep watch on the chat and I will jump in and ask your questions for Matt as we go along. And again, we are being recorded, so keep that in mind. And here we go. Matt, are you ready?
Sure.
All right, here we go.
Let's try it out. Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad to get this chance. I'm just gonna go to sharing my screen quick and then do an intro. Yeah, I'm glad to have this chance to speak with everybody. And I think I told her that I'm talking from my mom and dad's house unexpectedly, so I'm not sitting at my normal desk, and it's kind of funny, but and the lighting's a little weird. I'm not really purple, but I guess I'm purple for tonight's talk. Yeah, so this is honestly, it's one of my favorite topics because I started my career in agriculture in the early 2000s with a nonprofit that was promoting pasture-based meats and heritage breeds, and wound up doing ultrasound for beef carcass quality. So going around to farms and ultrasounding live cattle to evaluate the ribeye, where beef is graded between 12th and 13th ribs. Did that for a while, and then our program started a branded beef program. So we began buying whole animals and selling the meat through wholesale channels only, so to distributors and restaurants. And what we ran into right away was this difficulty in balancing all the cuts in a carcass. And that company went through a lot of growing pains with that problem. And I see how pricing is important for farm viability, but pricing can also be a strategy to help you with the carcass. So that's what I hope to show you by demonstrating the tool. And I'm going to talk about a few other pricing topics as I go. But yeah, once again, thanks for having me here. I do not know what I just did.
We still see your slide.
That's good to hear. There we go. All right, so let's see if I can advance the slides now. Don't seem
It does
to be
not
able to.
appear that your mouse is moving.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and reshare. I don't know
Mhm.
what happened, but I hit something and my slides disappeared. All right, you're seeing the slide,
Yes.
and there we go. Clicking made it advance. What I'm going to cover tonight, I'm going to go kind of quickly over prices in the marketplace. The slides I use are showing some prices from 2021 and 22. Then I'm going to talk about where you can see more modern price reports. I'm going to talk about where to begin with the pricing process for meat cuts, and then the approach that we use at the Meat Price Calculator tool, and then do a demonstration of the tool and kind of wrap it with some conclusions. One of the reasons that I started into creating the meat price calculator was because there was so much going on with meat marketing. This was about 2009, 2010. Local meat was really coming to the public's, attention. And I did a survey of 200 consumers, and I asked them if they bought local meat, and if they didn't buy it, why didn't they? And a lot of them cited that they said, I don't buy locally raised meat because it's too expensive. And I tell you the truth, I believed that as well. Um, but then I began to go and do some grocery store and farmers market price comparisons. And what I actually found in 2010 was that farmers market prices here in New York State were, let's say, semi-rural. I'm nowhere near New York City. Semi-rural, but with some college towns and some bigger cities, we were seeing that farmers market prices tended to be lower than grocery store prices, which I perceived as a problem, right? Because farms won't be able to get products into consumers' hands as efficiently as commodity systems and large grocers. And then, through, more recent years, we've seen the prices change. And so in the summer of 21, we asked that question again, how to farm prices compare with store prices. So we did the same kind of comparison that summer. We went and looked at a selection of cuts, and not every single cut, but a selection of cuts from beef, pork, um, and lamb, and we looked at 7 New York State, Ithaca, New York grocery stores. And during the same months, we looked at prices from 17 farms that were selling at farmers markets and farm stores. And I just make a little note here. It's not a perfect apples to apples comparison because the grocery stores are all just in Ithaca, but the farmers markets and farm store prices that we looked at were around the state. So not simply in Ithaca. But what we found back then was the same as we'd been seeing earlier, that the store prices tended to be higher. What we looked at was sirloin steak, ribeye steak, chuck roast, and ground beef, and then pork loin, bone-in, pork chops, bone-in because most farms seem to be selling bone-in chops, ground pork, meaning unseasoned ground pork, not sausages. And then we lumped together rib and loin chops, and we looked at ground lamb. And then we also sorted these cuts into some categories, depending on the claims on a label. So we wanted to, get at the differences that come with different label claims. So we had a conventional category, and that included any product that just said all natural, because all natural simply means minimally processed. And then we had level one, meaning one level of differentiation away from conventional. And so this was any product that said no added antibiotics, no added hormones, or any meat that was being sold as local. So all farm products at farmers markets and farm stores were automatically entered into level one, if even if they had no label claims, because they were being sold as local. And then level two meant further differentiated from conventional. And here we had anything that said pasture raised, grass fed, meaning 100% grass fed claims, or certified organic. And then we get into the price reports. Oh, no. This is an example just so you could see what we were looking at. We're going to look at the unit price, which is the smaller number there. It happens to be identical to the total price, but you want to look at the unit price when you're observing prices. And yeah, this steak would have been categorized as conventional because there's no label claims about production. And just notice that they cut this thing exactly to 1.00 pound. You just don't see that. And then this one would be categorized as level two because it says 100% grass fed, it says certified organic. And then the next one, this ground pork says raised without antibiotics, group housed, vegetarian fed. So we put this into level one. So just giving you some ideas of how we sorted out the products. Now, finally, as promised, this is the observations that we made. And I don't expect you, you don't need to screenshot these prices. I'll tell you where they're listed so you can find them. And again, they're old now. They're from 2021. But what we found is that the grocery store prices in general were still higher than farmers market prices or farm prices, particularly when it came to beef. So I'm going to draw your attention to this chuck roast here, and you can see that a grocery store um, Grocery store grain finished, no added hormones, no antibiotics. Chuck roast on average was $11.49 a pound, and then the farm price for that same product was $6.43. And then when you go over to the level two, being the either certified organic or 100% grass fed, the chuck roast average price at the store was $8.45, and the farmer's market average price was $6.85. So in both instances, the farm prices are lower than the grocery store prices. In fact, the farm prices are lower than the conventional products at grocery stores, which were $7.17 on average. Yeah, so this is the kind of thing that we were seeing, and you can see it through some other cuts there. So the lesson is, we got to revisit farm pricing because probably these low prices are not delivering a profit to the farm. Also want to draw your attention because it's interesting that the level one, which is the less differentiated product here, in the case of the chuck roast, has a higher price than the level two. And that is because actually the level one product, again, a grain finished beef that says no antibiotics, no added hormones, was being produced in New York State and Pennsylvania and then processed at a large packer in Pennsylvania, but it still had a higher cost for the grocery stores. And so that was reflected in their price. While the grass fed product usually was coming from South America. And that actually came in to the stores at a lower price, and that's why they were able to price it lower. So it's an interesting narrative here. You would expect the more differentiated beef, the level two beef, to be set at a higher price. But stores, recognizing their cost structure, were pricing things like this. And that really is the lesson for us. You need to understand our scale and our cost structure when we're bringing products to market in order to set prices. And really, the grocery stores are giving an example here, but also surprising for the consumer, in my opinion, that they could buy 100% grass-fed certified organic beef from South America for less than grain finished beef from the Northeast. When it came to pork and lamb, we found our producers were a little bit better at pricing. So you can see some instances where the farmers market prices are actually higher than the grocery store prices. Like I said, there's a few instances there, and in particular, it seems like the lamb producers understood how to set their prices because they tended to be closer to and even above farmers market prices. But you don't have to try to read all these numbers. I'll give them. I'll tell you where they are, and you can look at them later if you want. I also have some more recent reports to share. But the narrative, that this stuff was teaching us was that we need to revisit pricing, and that's what we were thinking back in 2010 as well. Some of the takeaways, and I wrote a short essay that you can find on meatsuite.com, which is a website I'll end up visiting during this talk. I wrote a little two-page essay called "The Pricing Pep Talk," and the idea is that often farmers tell me that they're nervous to increase their prices or nervous about consumer reaction, and this is to sort of pep talk those price increases. So for starters, we could think about if we look, as we just saw at grocery stores, consumers are already paying high prices. If you feel like $7 a pound is a lot for ground beef as a farmer, well, just know that the average price in the grocery store is close to seven or is above seven, depending on the product for ground beef. So you can kind of think about that. They're already paying those kinds of prices. Secondly, local meat consumers, people who seek out farmers markets, are looking for a product that is differentiated, and they're not primarily motivated by price. In some rural markets, it might be the case that consumers think that they're going to find low prices at the farmers market, but generally, people that are looking for locally raised meat at farmers markets are looking for something that they have, they have the perception that it's fresher, healthier, or they just want to support local agriculture. And so their motivations are different, and um, what I want to say, their willingness to pay goes up with that differentiation. So they're not primarily price driven consumers, and that gives you some cushion on your price increases. And then finally, remember that if you do increase your prices, and you're worried, that maybe you'll sell less, fewer units sold does not automatically mean that you're going to earn less money. And so I have this little table at the bottom here. I'm using some prices from 2021, back when the average farmer's market price for a level one ground beef was $6.29 across several farms. And if you were typically selling 80 pounds a month through the farmer's market, then you were grossing $503, right? So price times quantity gives you the total sales of 503. If you were to undergo a price increase all the way up to what at that time was the grocery store average of 785 for this grain finished, no antibiotics, no added hormones product, you could afford to have 16 customers not buy it. Or maybe those customers that used to buy 4 pounds are just going to buy three, right? But you could see that you would sell fewer units and you'd still be grossing, in this case, $502. So nearly the same amount gross sales, even with fewer units because of the price increase. And then, of course, if you don't have those losses, if people keep buying at their usual pace, then you're going to have higher gross sales during that time period. So if cash flow is a concern or consumer response is a concern, just know that it's not necessarily the case that you will be earning less money in the same time period when you sell fewer units. Depends, of course, on the prices you choose, but something to consider. So when we talk about pricing, and we're kind of stepping in now to the how we use the meat price calculator, the first thing is to really, I think about the farm's financial goals. And in fact, the meat price calculator doesn't it doesn't tell you what will be profitable. It tells you if the prices that you're using are meeting your goals. So you get to state what your goals are and the level of profit that you're seeking. And so what I suggest is just sketching it out in the beginning, starting somewhere and sketching out how much you'd like the farm to gross, and then dividing that total across your different enterprises. I'm giving a simple and made up example here where I'm saying, okay, I want the farm to gross $100,000 in sales, and I'm going to divide that up across two enterprises, beef and pork. And then I'm going to look at the number of head that I expect to harvest and kind of make that, assessment about how I'm going to divide those goals up, and then just do some simple math, right? So don't use these numbers for your farm, but just say if we're hoping to grow $70,000 out of a beef operation, we expect to harvest 26 animals that year. Then it stands to reason that we need to gross $2,692 per head. And right now I'm just talking about gross sales, not digging in on profit. This is a place to begin and start, back of the envelope, as they say, and start working your way towards price. We're going to think about how much we wish to gross. We're going to think about the implications of profit out of those gross sales, and then we're going to take it to the next step. The next thing to consider is the different channels that you're selling meat through. Most people are selling through more than one channel. I'm just kind of review these channels. One that I'm a big fan of and that I, do a lot of work here in New York State to encourage is what I call the freezer trade, or I don't know what it's called regionally in your area, but that's the sale of wholes, halves, and quarters direct to consumer. So we're going to call that freezer trade. But let's start at the bottom. What we could expect in terms of the price received, price per pound of hanging weight or carcass weight, is commodity sales would bring low prices relative to these other direct to consumer channels. And then we start to move up. We'll say we can look to regional brands or co-ops that are buying whole animals. And so our sales, as it says in the dark red box on the left, we're selling whole carcasses to these customers. And it says no processing because the farm doesn't need to arrange for the processor, right? When you sell to a regional brand or a commodity channel, you're not making appointments with the processor. You're just selling animals off and getting paid based on carcass weight. If we move up into the purple channels, they are in the center. These are channels where you're selling, again, still by the carcass weight. You're not selling cuts, but you are going to be arranging for the processor. So quarters, halves, and wholes direct to consumer. You're charging them based on carcass weight, and you're making appointments with processors. Same with if you can find butcher shops or restaurants that want to bring in, whole lamb or a half a pig or a beef for their business, then you're selling carcass sales. And then you move up You'd expect even higher prices in these channels where you're selling meat by the cut. And of course, you're arranging for all the processing. These are when you're selling by the cut wholesale to restaurants and retailers, whether they're butcher shops or grocery stores, but they're paying you based on cuts, not carcass weight. Your own farm store where you sell cuts out of a freezer, or when you attend a farmer's market. So as we look across these channels, we think about price expectations, and we'd think, okay, when you go at the top of this, we'd have our highest prices, right? Highest price per pound, or we could calculate out uh, price per pound carcass weight would be even in these by the cut channels. And then the prices get lower and lower as we go down. But the perspective to remember is that the marketing effort, which really marketing effort comes about as hours, right? So the hours that you spend are very important to quantify and to value. Even if you're not writing yourself paychecks from the farm, you need to value that time for comparing opportunities. So the amount of labor that it takes to sell in those channels at the bottom in red, the amount of marketing labor or marketing effort is very low, and so is the price. So that doesn't mean that any channel here is actually a good or a bad channel. They're all just different, right? Because as you move up into higher and higher prices, you're going to find that you need to exert more and more marketing effort. Let's compare freezer trade sales. Again, quarters, halves, and wholes. Let's do an example, let's say with beef quarters. With beef quarters, if you only had a few head a year, you're only looking for a few customers. So you'll put in your marketing effort, whatever advertising, time spent on the phone answering questions, maybe showing people around the farm, arranging for processing and getting the animal there. But the time effort is relatively small for the number of pounds that you sell to each customer. When you move up to the farmer's market, it becomes more time intensive, hours spent at the market and additional hours promoting your farm and your products, right? For the pounds that you sell, it's a relatively high cost. So what we're seeing here is while we just receive different prices in different channels, we also have different marketing cost with those channels, and it tends that they sync together like that. So we're going to keep that in mind, the different cost it takes to sell in different channels. And that really gives us what I would call the pricing challenge. There are factors that make pricing meat inherently difficult. One is what we just reviewed. Each channel that we sell in has different costs, right? Mostly I'm talking about your time, your marketing effort, and maybe additional dollars that you spend on advertising and such. Each cut on a carcass when we're selling cuts, and that's what I'm going to focus on at this point, comes in a yield or a proportion on the carcass. So, that lends to confusion with price setting because you have these yields. And then each cut also has a level of demand in different channels. And I would actually argue that the level of demand could be considered specific to each channel that you sell in. For example, if you're selling at a farmer's market and to a restaurant, the restaurant customer, the chef is going to have certain demand for certain cuts that you may see a different kind of demand for those cuts at the farmer's market and vice versa. So the level of demand for each cut varies from channel to channel, and the proportion on the carcass is a consideration, a different cost. Because of all of this, price setting becomes confusing and difficult. But also because of this, we need a unique set of prices for each channel that we sell in. So if you are selling in your own farm store, or let's say an honor system freezer on your farm, and you're also selling at a farmer's market, I would have two different sets of prices. Why? Because your marketing cost at the farmer's market is higher than your marketing cost at a self-serve stand on the farm, right? We could recognize that. So you need a unique set of prices for each channel that you sell in. Now, I was doing this talk in Pennsylvania, and when I said that, there was a couple there, and they said, Matt, we have this exact scenario. We're selling at a farmer's market in our hometown, and then we're selling at a farmer's market in Pittsburgh, 2 hours away. They said, you're suggesting we would have higher prices in Pittsburgh than we do in our hometown. And I said, yes. And they said, well, if the Pittsburgh customers find out, won't they be mad? that we have lower prices, back home? And I said, absolutely not. You tell them if they want to save money on meat, all they need to do is make the 4-hour round trip drive and they can get those lower prices. Right. So that's kind of a joke. It's a true story. It's kind of a joke because it helps you recognize why it's okay to have different prices in different channels, right? Because the customer's not going to drive 4 hours to save money on meat. They're going to pay the higher prices where it's convenient. If you're doing two farmers markets in your same town, a Wednesday and a Saturday farmers market, I would not have two different sets of prices because your costs are really the same for attending those markets. But when you have markets that are separated, by a lot of miles, or you have different channels, like I said, on the farm and then at the farmers market, I would have different sets of prices. When we think about having different sets of prices, people start to confuse that with profit. And often people will talk about, I'm really profitable when I sell in that channel, but then I'm not profitable when I sell in that channel. And I say, why would we think about having different levels of profit in different channels? Really, the act of price setting is to ensure that we get the same level of profit in each channel that we sell. So let me just give you an example. Once again, made up numbers, don't use them. They're just to illustrate a point. We can create a scenario where the profit per head is fixed across all animals, regardless of what channel we sell them through. And what the real variable that causes us to have different price lists is the cost of marketing. So let's consider we have a pen with 3 animals in it. Regardless of what channel they go into, our cost of production is the same. Let's assume for all animals, right? So the animal that's going to wind up going to the farmer's market and be sold by the cut, the one that's going to go to a wholesale restaurant customer by the cut, and the one that we sell to 4 different customers as quarters. All those animals have the same cost of production. And then assuming we take them all to the same processor, they have similar carcass weights, right? Essentially, our cost of processing is the same across all channels, regardless of where that meat's going to go. So that's when we plug in our desired profit per head. If we just say cost of production is the same across all channels, processing cost is the same across all channels. Let's just pretend that our desired profit per head is another cost and it's the same across all channels. We plug that in. So why do we need different price sheets? Because our cost of marketing will vary across those channels. These are made up numbers, but here I am estimating that it's going to take me half the time to sell with the same quantity to a restaurant customer because it's wholesale. I have an order minimum. They have to place, a weekly order. I make the delivery. So my marketing cost is half that of the farmer's market where I have to go set up, stay through the whole market, pack up and drive home, right? So I'm going to put that higher marketing cost into my pricing, and I need to gross $2,898 on animals that I sell through the farmer's market by the cut. I can charge less to my wholesale customers with the 2,418 because it takes me less time. They place their orders online. I pack them and deliver them. It's a lot less time for me. And then when I'm selling quarters to customers, I just have to deal with 4 customers, maybe a few are repeat customers. They'll get the advantage of lower pricing from me because it's a very efficient channel for me, right? And this is a good time to mention when I'm talking about pricing, sometimes people ask, what is what is the discount that I should give to wholesale customers? Well, I don't think there's a magic number for below retail that you automatically offer for wholesale. I think you have to look at each wholesale customer in this kind of scenario, consider your cost in selling to them and how it will differ from retail, and that's how you determine your pricing. It's not just taking that retail price and then creating a discount. All right, so yeah, we are going to have different prices for different channels. The Cornell Meat Price Calculator, it's on meatsuite.com. Like I said, I'll show you that in just a moment. It's free to use. Anyone can set up an account and use it. You can also use it without creating an account. It's for pricing meat by the carcass or by the cut. Pricing meat by the carcass is kind of the easier example, so I'm not going to demonstrate that tonight, but I will demonstrate pricing meat by the cut, which is a little more complicated. In order to use the meat price calculator and really benefit from it, you will need to have some data from your farm. And I have a slide coming up, and there's also a handout on Meat Suite that tells you what all data you need to gather before you use it. And so My words of advice, the Cornell Meat Price Calculator is really cool and then fun to use. But before you try using it, gather some simple data from your farm so that you can, feel like you're getting good, meaningful results from it. And yeah, I wanted to mention this is a project of Cornell, but we've also partnered with NC State University in North Carolina, their NC Choices program, and um, together we've gotten federal grants from the USDA to support the development of this tool and the education that we do around it. All right. So the way that the price calculator is set up is sort of just to think in these terms. Like we've been discussing market channel costs and profit goals, farm identified profit goals. And what we're really going to do is just think of all of those dollars, even your profits, and we're just going to lump them all together. We're going to accumulate all dollars. So I kind of tried to be cute here and make it look like it's the pieces of the primals of a carcass, but we have our cost of production that we're going to consider, and then we're going to have a production profit. So I want to make it an important distinction. You should have a good estimate of your cost of production. And I'm talking about sort of a break-even cost of production, like when an animal is finished and slaughter ready and the production work is over, what's that break-even cost or value of that animal? And then to that add the production profit because we want our production enterprise on the farm and our marketing enterprise on the farm to both be profitable, which means you need to consider both sets of costs and then add above them profit, right? So if I've said it too fast, because I'm used to presenting this slide so often, we're going to look at break-even cost of production, but then we're going to add additional dollars above that so that we have a profit for the act of producing slaughter ready animals. The next cost that we can consider because it's easy to get data on is trucking, and that means driving the animal to the meat processor and then driving back to pick up the meat and perhaps deliver it or bring it back to the farm. So trucking is really easy. I'm just talking about the trucking from the farm to the processor and then back to the farm. Processing costs, easiest data to gather because it's on the receipt from your processor. So you're going to know what your carcass weight was. You're going to know what they charged you for slaughter fee, for cut and wrap, and for any additional processing. And they've done the record keeping for you on your invoice. So we're going to include that cost. Now we're going to have the cost of marketing. What's going to take is sort of estimating how many hours in that channel it takes for you to sell all the meat from one animal. Understand that it will be an imperfect estimate the first time around, but the best idea is to start estimating that cost of marketing and then improve your record keeping as you go in small steps to get a better and better look at the real true cost of marketing. But you can start with your hours, looking at how many hours it takes to sell all the meat from one animal. Also understand it's never that neat and clean. Um, you don't finish selling the last pound from that animal before you bring in the next, but you're going to do your best to make an estimate. And then in addition to that cost of that marketing, that's the value of your time is the cost of marketing. And then any additional marketing costs, if you're paying for advertising, then you're going to lump those in as well. We also want to have a marketing profit. And the marketing profit really speaks to the reason that you chose to be in that channel. The idea is that you think you can beat market prices or that you can make more money for the farm by going into these direct to consumer channels, and that's going to be reflected in the marketing profit. The marketing cost is just making you break even and paying for all that time, and then the marketing profit is where you really make money on that extra effort. So if you gather all of these costs into one pot, then you've got a large sum. And then you just need to take those dollars and divide them out across the cuts because we've included all the costs and the profits. As we divide those dollars out across the cuts, that's going to be our pricing structure. How do we decide how to divide dollars out across a selection of cuts and pounds? Remember, we were saying it's challenging that we have these yields and this consumer demand. We're really going to use the yield and the consumer demand as our guide for how to divide dollars out across cuts. Right. So some cuts, let's say, rib and loin chops on a lamb, really high consumer demand, very small yield, right? So that sounds to me like something I'm gonna price pretty high. Something like the round or the chuck on a beef animal, high yield, relatively lower consumer demand. That's an opportunity for maybe some lower prices, but we're gonna divide these dollars out based on our knowledge about demand and yield. That's really what the meat price calculator helps you do. Um, I'm about to do the demo of the meat pricing tool on the website. And before I do that, I just want to review some numbers that are already filled in. So it's going to ask, what is your break-even cost of production? I've already filled in $1,300 per head. I'm going to do a beef example. Don't use that number for your farm. I'm using it as a fictional number for the example. And then in addition to my break even, keeping my production farm running at break even is the $1,300. In addition, I would like profit, right? So I'm going to add another $100 when it asks me about my production profit goal. Then it's going to ask me about my marketing time, and I'm going to think about how much time is invested in selling. So I'm just going to with an estimate. I'm going to say it takes me 40 hours at the farmer's market to sell all the meat from one beef. I can sell faster to my restaurant, my wholesale customers. It might take me 20 hours. With freezer trade customers, quarters and halves, it's going to take me 10 hours. So I'm going to start by estimating my time. And when you estimate your time, you can start to put a value on it. So my estimate for the farmer's market is that if I'm selling 80 pounds of beef at every farmer's market, then I expect it would take me 5 farmers markets at 8 hours each and $15 an hour. So I think that my marketing cost, just in terms of my labor, is about $600 a head when I sell beef cuts at the farmer's market. In addition to getting paid for those hours, think of it as it's your $15 an hour that you're getting paid to work there. You also want to get a profit on this animal for the marketing effort. And so that's where I'm going to fill in this $500 per head. So I reviewed those numbers so that when we get over to the website, I can just click right through and you'll see they're already filled in. I'm going to hop right on there now. And if you could just clarify, are you seeing the Cornell Meat Price Calculator web page?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. Thank you. Um, so you can come here and you can set up an account. I'm already logged into my account, but anyone is welcome to create an account here. It's free. It's a Cornell University resource. This Get Prepared tab will give you a list of what data you need to gather so that when you get on the tool, you already have it all. My advice is get it all on a separate sheet of paper in advance and then give yourself, 20 minutes to sit down and go through the tool where you're not going to get interrupted. So this is a list of, if you click on this lead, it'll tell you all the information you need to gather in advance. We have blank sheets if you want to write down, because one of those data points that you'll need is every cut that you have from one carcass and how many pounds you have of that cut. So we have a little blank worksheet if you want to write down all your cuts and weights. There are some meat processors who can give this to you now, but not all. Up here in New York, it's less than half are able to just give you that list out of their equipment. I mentioned earlier there's a pricing pep talk essay that's here on this link. That includes those 2021 prices that I was showing you on the slides. I said I'll tell you where to find them later. So if you wanted to see those are on this pricing pep talk. And then there are also videos. Actually, the same talk that I'm going to do tonight, that I'm doing tonight, it's all recorded in little, 5 to 10 minute pieces. So if you want a refresher when you go to use the meat price calculator, you can come and look at these. All right,
And
so
I want
that's,
to, oh,
yeah,
let me jump in real quick.
please.
Um, I will include the links in the emails like that goes out every week. This one will have a lot of links in it. That way you can find all of this stuff at a later time too.
Thank you. See if I know how to navigate my own website. Looks like it. All right. I also should mention, in cooperation with Colorado State University, we created a cost of production estimation tool. I just want to, be cautious because cost of production is very challenging for folks. I want to be cautious and tell you that it uses census data. And so, it may not be a perfect match for your farm, but you can choose your region and your species. And then it uses census data from small and mid-sized farms that reported on the census that they were primarily or exclusively, I should say, um, selling in local foods channels. So they're operations that are more similar to yours than, let's say, huge operations. So you can look at those census reportings and come up with a cost of production using that tool. All right, now I'm going to go to my dashboard. When you have an account, you can, with this green box, you can start a new pricing list, and then all the pricing lists that you've created are going to appear here. So you can see all the ones I've done. Mine are all demonstration prices, but I've set up a demo for tonight. So if I was starting a fresh pricing sheet, it would ask me, um, what market channel are you pricing for? What species, and are you doing it by the cut or by the carcass? So you can see here that my West Virginia farmers market, it shows in these gray boxes that this pricing sheet is for farmers market beef cuts. And so now all I have to do is go in and start working on it. Oh, darn, I did it again. I was trying to get rid of the view of people so I could see my screen more clearly, and I lost. Here we go. All right. Sorry, I lost the ability to click on that, so I have to share again.
That's okay. Sharing's the hardest part, I think, for myself.
Yeah, like I said, I usually have a second monitor, and for some reason that does make it easier. But all right, I think we're back. I'm
Yes, you
back.
are back.
So we have the West Virginia Farmers Market. So you can see there's four tabs here: your costs, your prices, results, and then revise your prices. And the fun is that when you do all your homework and you get all your data, the fun is to get to the revise prices tab, and that's where you get to sort of play the pricing game. But first, you have to do that work. So on the your costs tab, there are then three smaller tabs: production, and I've already reviewed these numbers with you. So you would just put in your cost of production and your production profit, go to the next step. Then it would ask you about processing. So what we're going to do is basically work off of one animal. We're going to do record keeping on one animal. And so here it's going to ask you to enter the carcass weight. My suggestion is that you choose an average, a good average animal from your farm, a typical animal that's representative of the group, and then take that animal to the processor when it's time and track it all the way through. Get the carcass weight and then weigh out all of the sellable cuts that you get from that animal. If you're already a really good record keeper and you have all those kinds of records, for many animals, you can take an average from that group and treat that average as a single animal. But it's going to ask you for a carcass weight, and that's going to ask you what did you pay in a slaughter fee or kill fee at the processor? What did you pay in cut and wrap? And then we're going to also get at that trucking cost because it's pretty easy to get a hold of. Um, you can say how much it took you to truck that batch of animals to the processor and how much it took you to drive back and pick up the meat. That's what we're calling delivery cost. There's even a little helper to help you figure that out. But that one's fairly easy. Let me see if I can get rid of it now. There we go. All right, so you're going to enter these various costs and the carcass weight. That's on the processing tab. Then you can go over to the marketing tab. I already reviewed these two values for you. How many hours is it going to take you to get all this meat sold in this channel? And then how much above paying for your time would you like to make for this effort for going to these channels? And so that's my $500 per head. So we've got all our costs added in. We can go to the your prices tab. What you can do on this tab is add your cuts and your prices. You need the total pounds of each sellable cut from your sample animal or your average from a group, and the price that you're currently using to sell that. So I've already populated this because you would not want to watch me try to type all this in while we were online together. So this is all typed in here. I've got ground beef. I'm getting 188 pounds out of that 605-pound carcass. And let's just say I'm currently selling at $5. So that's how that one went in. And you can see all these other cuts. Down here is where you add cuts. You can name a cut anything that you want to name it. You don't have to stick to particular naming system. You can call it Steve's Special Steak if you want to. I also want to point out that if you have additional processing fees on some products like sausages, you're able to add that additional processing fee. So like, let's say my processor charges me 35 cents a pound to make breakfast sausage. You can add that in here, and I'm going to say that's on 30 pounds of sausage. And then I'm going to put in, my my current sausage price that I'm selling it to consumers. This way we'll account for the additional processing fees. I'm not going to add that cut. That was just an example for you. But to tell you, smoking, patties, hot dogs, sausage, anything like that, you can account for those additional processing costs that apply just to those items. So, okay, when you've entered all your cuts, all your pounds in here, you're done with the prices tab and you can go to the results. It's going to tell you, if your current prices are delivering the profit goals that you've made. And again, I want to be clear, that's your profit goals, and that's something to work towards. Also want to say, if you're setting prices for a channel for the very first time, you can just put $1 a pound for your original price throughout here. Because if you don't have prices yet, just put $1 a pound. Of course, when you go to the results tab, in that instance, it's going to tell you that your pricing doesn't meet your goals. That doesn't matter because it's the idea is to get on to the revised prices. All right, so with our current pricing structure, this is saying you're not going to meet your goals based on your current inputs, your cost of production, your cost of processing, your trucking, and your profit expectations, right? This current price set of prices doesn't deliver. Let me review some of these numbers here. The 3,169 is how much you would need to gross off this beef animal in order to meet the goal. The 2,630 is what you would currently gross when all pounds are sold. And the 538 loss is the difference between those two. So it's not a literal financial loss. As you recall, I had a $500 profit goal in there. And I'm not really literally taking a loss. What this means is I'm just not realizing my goals. Um, your weighted average price across all pounds in order to realize your goals needs to be 814, but with your current pricing, your weighted average price across all pounds is 675. And then we're just letting you know you had a carcass to retail yield of 64%, which is totally a good yield on a beef animal. So now you've seen the results, you have the chance to go in and start revising your prices. And as I've sort of already said, this is the fun part. You have to do all that work in advance. You have to get all those weights of all those cuts, the carcass weight and, the processing costs and come up with a cost of production. You have to do all that, but then you get to come in here and start revising prices. So what this screen shows you is here, let's look at ground beef. You have 188 pounds. Remember, we're thinking about yield and consumer demand for that cut when we're setting our price. So we're going to have that in our mind. We're telling you the yield. Our original price was $5 a pound, so we're going to try to make some price changes. But let me run around to some other cuts first. I'm going to look at the fillet. All right, I was charging $15 a pound for fillet. I could increase that from $15 a pound up to 25. Notice that the gain loss has changed, so it's keeping tabs, updating the math as we go. But also notice there's only 6.5 pounds of fillet, right? So a $10 per pound price increase only gives us an extra $65 on this animal. So that's why we want you to keep that yield in mind as you start to change prices. Ribeye steaks, I'm going to increase that from 14 to 19. I had 23 pounds there, and I'm still chipping away at this number up here. It's down to 358. And so that's the game that you're going to play. You're going to think about consumer demand and yield and click around. And change prices. Well, I remember when short ribs were super popular, so I'm going to increase that. But really, since I have 188 pounds of ground beef, a change in my ground beef price is going to have a really big impact. You can see that it went almost to green, and now we got to green. So what you do on this page is start adjusting prices until you see the numbers at the top turn green. That means you've hit or exceeded your goal. It's okay to exceed your goal. I'm exceeding my goal by $35 a head. I think we can all live with that. But also, just because it turns green doesn't mean that you're done. I want you to really think about the proportions or the yields of those different cuts and the rate at which they sell. So you want to use pricing as a mechanism to slow down consumer demand on really popular cuts that come in small yields. like the filet or the ribeye steaks. And then you can also use pricing maybe to accelerate the sales of things that come in huge yields, like anything out of the chuck and the round or your ground beef, right? And also recognize that when you do a price increase on something um, like a ribeye steak, and if a consumer comes to you at the farmer's market and they really have their heart set on grilling some ribeyes tonight, right? And then they see this price, and they think, oh boy, that just seems really high to me. That's not going to necessarily result in a lost customer. That's an opportunity for you to say, oh, you want a steak, you want something you can grill. We also have these sirloins, right? So you're going to use that price to move them into the cuts that you need to sell and direct them towards another cut that it can be cooked that way, or another cut you think they'll enjoy that's at a lower price point. So you're going to use price as sort of an inventory management tool. And so just because you hit the green here doesn't mean you just close out and say you're done. You're going to want to take a few minutes and click around and keep thinking about, do I need to speed up demand for top round? Do I have the wiggle room maybe to lower that a little bit? Is there something else that still seems low that I could increase the price on? Maybe stew beef still feels a little low. I could bring this up to 6, create a bigger cushion, and now maybe I have the chance to lower the price on something else, that sort of thing. When
I
you
just
are
want to
done,
step in with a
oh yeah,
question.
yeah, please.
Um, when you say you're just playing around with the numbers, is you're I just want to clarify, like, you couldn't just go down through there and add $1 to everything and make your numbers turn green, because that kind of defeats the purpose, right?
Right, right. You really want to think about yields and demand. That's your influence. And each person on here, you've got the knowledge of how your consumers are asking for cuts in this channel that you're working on. Maybe it's a farmer's market in a really urban setting with a lot of people who are higher income. Maybe it's a farmer's market in a more rural setting. You're thinking about the demand for those cuts and the yields, and using that, you're not just going to blanket increase everything by 10%, at least in the beginning, because you're fine tuning. And like I said, if you tend to um, be getting backed up on certain things, and there's hams and shoulders with pork, there's rounds and chucks with beef, like we all have that thing that backs up, that tends to be a high yield item. You really want to use the prices to help smooth that out, and partially that's going to be in slowing down sales of bacon, ribeyes, lamb chops, right? The things that everybody wants.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for asking that. So you can save your list when you're done with it. It'll go back out on your list. You can copy it on your dashboard, I should say, and so on. I just want to take a quick minute and then I'll stop presenting. But I want to show you on Meat Suite. So Meat Suite does a lot of different things, and it's got a directory of bulk meat products, which is exclusive to New York and North Carolina. However, if you go to this For Farmers and Processors tab, you will find our other resources, and those are available to everyone everywhere. So the meat price calculator that we were just on, that's available to everyone. We also have these price reports. Before I get into them, let me say we have a publication called Creating Consumer-Friendly Bulk Meats. I realize this is a farmer's market audience, but if you sell in bulk to consumers, again, quarters, halves, wholes, or mixed bundles, this publication just walks you through some ways to smooth that out for the consumer, maybe win over some first time buyers that are very nervous about bulk meat buying. So check that publication out. And then we have our price reports. So we're doing monthly grocery store price reports. They are being done in Ithaca, New York. It is what it is. That's where I have a grad student who can go into all the stores each month. So let's show you the grocery store price report. How do I zoom? Let's see, there we go. So what we're doing is looking at that same selection of cuts. We're only comparing the items that are certified organic and those that are not. This has to do with our funding source on this from the USDA. But we'll tell you the number of observations and then the average, the min, and the max. So chuck roast at grocery stores in November of 24. The min was $6.46 a pound. It's incredible. I don't know where this was, but the max was $21.99, and the average across the 9 observations was 947. And then we show you December. Um, so yeah, you can look at what's going on. Like I said, you can look at the grocery stores near you by just visiting them, but you can also check out our grocery store price. This includes Target, Walmart, Wegmans, Tops, which is a New York State regional grocery store brand, Aldi's, Trader Joe's, and then there's one independent grocer. It's not a natural food store, but it's just an independent grocer. So that's the 7 grocery stores that are giving you this information. And then we also have a farmer's market price report. It's a little lean in December of 24 because a lot of our farmers markets had stopped seasonally. So we don't always, there's some here with all zeros because we didn't have any sales, but these price reports are based on actual sales. So farms that are using a POS system like Square are actually giving us their data and we're computing the average based on items sold. So what we're able to report is a weighted average price. Let's look at our non-organic ground beef. The weighted average price was 8.44 a pound. The min was 7.95. The max was 10. So given that the weighted average is a little bit closer to the min, that tells me that farms that were pricing their ground beef more like $8 a pound were selling more pounds than those that were selling 10. And then you can see the volume of sales that this is based on was 25 pounds. So we update these monthly. It will be a little bit thin for reporting during the winter months, but those are always available at Meat Suite. Now I will finally take a breath and see if there's any questions.
Yes, we do have one here in the chat. We learned last week to track our time for doing the tasks in production. For example, a half an hour a day to feed or a week to muck, an hour a week to muck out the barns. But where do those numbers get plugged into the mix? They're part of our production costs.
Yep, so they go into your cost of production. What you really want to think about is, um, if you're spending, let's say that's a great example, a half an hour feeding animals each day, what we'd want to do is figure out um, half an hour every day, 352 days, and then how many head did you harvest in that year, right? So you were feeding for half an hour, but if you harvested 10 animals, then you're going to want to take that time and well, actually you're going to sum up all your costs and divide it by the number of animals that were marketed. People often get confused. I mean, I may be going off on a rabbit trail here, but people get confused about, well, but I'm keeping the cow and she gives me the calf. So how do I account for time feeding her and so on? What we like to do is just say all your time that you spend feeding divided by the number of head that you harvested, and that will give you your cost of production. So yeah, all those chores, all those tasks are great for building out a more reliable cost of production.
And there was a cost of production tool on the Meat Suite website as well. And that's where those numbers would get plugged into to help you come up
That's
with
right.
production. I think you can include feed and time
Yep.
and other things in that part as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, you can get as detailed as you like.
Yes. Do we have any other questions? Please feel free to come off mute if you've got one. Okay, here's one. I didn't see an option for chicken. Could we use the calculator for chicken?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I should have thought to say that on my own. Um, yeah, I all of my work is funded by grants. Grants have been in the news lately, but all my work is funded by USDA grants. At the time, we built a livestock price calculator. Really, this was back in 2010, and people weren't really selling chicken cuts, but they are now.
Mhm.
So what you can do is you can just lie to the calculator. I recommend using the lamb or goat as your species. The math is the same regardless of the species. There's nothing that's unique. We just want you to remember what you were working on. So go in there, pretend you're pricing on a lamb. When you name your cuts, of course, you're going to name them things like chicken breast and wings. Oh, I'm the one who sees this user data. I'll know that that's not lamb cuts. And you can just use it in the very same way. So your cost of production, your slaughter costs. If you're slaughtering on farm, that's an estimate of your time and materials, right? You can use everything just the same way and price out chicken cuts. We've had lots of people do it that way.
Yeah, and that gives me a great time to plug the poultry trailer that we have available with the West Virginia Farmers Market Association that you can rent on our website. So if you were renting the poultry trailer, processing that, you could just put those $35 charge there, right there in your cost of production and
That's
calculate
right.
that as well. So
That's a perfect plug. I'm glad you guys have that resource. That's awesome.
yes, we have three of them across the state. So check out our website, guys, if you need one of those. Does anyone else have any questions?
I've got a curiosity with the early information, the study you did that was in 2021. Since then, have you seen the prices versus farmers market and the store become more equal, or farmers market? And the second part of that, I guess we got several people on the call because I know that was in New York. For West Virginia, I'm actually seeing the opposite here. And I was just curious or is everybody else seeing the opposite, where farmers market meat is actually more expensive than what you get in the store, but there's a reason for that, I believe that.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for asking that. Yeah, I'm glad to say that our more recent price comparisons, and they're there on our website. You know, you can look at November, December grocery and December farmers market. We have seen sort of a price correction. I think that the food inflation in general encouraged farmers that they could increase their prices. I like to think that my talks in New York State, I mean, that's where I work. I've done this talk across the state many, many times, have encouraged farms and taught them how to increase prices. And we do see, on average, I think our farmers market prices are just a little bit higher and edging out grocery store prices. Also want to point out we did, because I work so closely with North Carolina State University, we did price comparisons in North Carolina in the summer of 2021, and down there, their farm prices were all higher than grocery stores. But that was all really focused around Raleigh, Durham, and kind of a more metro area. But yeah, so we're seeing that they're coming closer together in recent times. And yeah, I mean, I hope you got the gist that farm prices, farms selling meat to consumers at farmers markets should definitely have higher prices than grocery stores because your cost is that much higher. You just simply
Right.
can't get packaged meat out to the consumer that way, as efficiently, which means as at lower cost as the grocery stores.
That's
Yeah,
a little confusing on the data because one of our one of the things you compete or look against when you're selling is what is it for in the grocery store. So you have to educate your quality to people that over a grocery store versus what we're selling, and that can be a challenge sometimes.
I totally agree, but let me give you an example. Have you ever been to a livestock auction, like a feeder sale?
Sure.
Right. So here's what I always tell people about feeder sales. Bidders bid on different pens of calves, right? They bid differently. One pen of calves will demand a higher price than another pen of calves. What you're seeing in action is that when you understand your consumer and you design a product that's exactly what they want, their willingness to pay goes up. So when they see that calf product, which is, a black 500-pound muscled, castrated and vaccinated, started on feed, weaned, they see that calf, they pay higher. All right. So when it comes to the farmers market scene, the tricky thing about prices is you really want to find the market that has consumers who already value what you're producing. So you're not trying to convince a grocery store or a discount driven shopper about the value of what you have. You're trying to find a marketplace that has customers that already value it, and their willingness to pay is like that bidder at the sale barn. So farmers market is the place to go. Those are people who are seeking a differentiated product and they appreciate the different traits that you have to offer. And I love talking about that because we've all seen it happen at the sale barn.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? We've got to think too, and this is it's always hard to price things because in our hearts, and maybe this is an Appalachian thing, we want to give people value. We want to, you want to sell that friend of yours that beef because you're cutting them a deal. They're coming to you so that they're not going to the grocery store, right? But we have to remember that Walmart's logo is well, it used to be, live better, save less. Oh my goodness, I had it before I started talking. What is Walmart's logo? Something save more something. That's not what the farmers market's for. You're not going there to save money on bulk price. It's you're not getting that bulk pricing. That's not why you're there. And that's not why we're there. We're there to sell it to make our businesses profitable. We're not a discount retailer. That's what, there we go. There we go. Walmart is a discount retailer or a discount retailer at a grocery store. That's not what our farmers markets are.
The other thing that's great about meat is there's a variety of cuts, right? So we don't all eat ribeye steaks for dinner every night, but there's chucks and rounds, which are also delicious and come in, with more affordable price points. So I like that. I really like that because I understand. Yeah, we want people to get our great food. We want them to be able to afford it, and we have a variety of cuts at a variety of price points.
Anybody else? Any questions? What a wonderful session tonight. Thank you so very much, Matt. This has been so informative, and we are going to have a ton of links in the email that's going to come out along with the YouTube link and the quick survey that we will do. And I also want to thank everybody that got the link from last week's video and had already filled out the survey. I think we had 6 responses within an hour or two. So you guys are right on it, ready to go. Again, Matt, thank you so very much. What a wonderful session. It's wow. You're the man.
Thank you. Thanks. It was
Got
fun.
this
So
amazing website, and we're going to use it. And we're
please
going to
do.
get together, yeah, as our team there, and help everybody figure this stuff out and get their stuff set up. So thank you again. Thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And we will see you next week if you are interested in poultry processing. So
All right.
see ya.
Thanks. Good night. See you.